He was born in Warsaw, New York on January 1st, 1944. He attended Tennessee State University, class of 1965, with a BS in psychology. He was an Air Force Reserve officer in the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps, commissioned Second Lieutenant, U.S. Air Force 1965, pilot training class 67-A, Williams Air Force Base, Arizona, KC-135 training, Castle Air Force Base, California, 42nd Air Refueling Squadron, Loring Air Force Base, Maine, 2 tours, Southeast Asia, Vietnam War, I'm sorry I didn't ask for pronunciation, Air Force Base, Thailand, 1968, and in Thailand in 1970. Highest rank held was Captain 0-3. So we have a very impressive resume, and he will tell you more about himself, but he's here to talk about the Tuskegee Airmen as the son of one of them. So please welcome Captain Howard Baugh.
I'm going to try not to use the mic, so I only got 2 hands. First of all, anybody want to guess why I'm wearing a red jacket? I'm the president of the Howard Baugh chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, based in Petersburg. It's named after my father, who was a Petersburg neighbor, born and raised, graduated in 1941 from Virginia State College at that time, and became a Tuskegee Airman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, as Susan already did. But these are the airplanes that I flew. It's a T-41. This is the initial military trainer, basically a Cessna 172. Intermediate or initial jet trainer, primary jet trainer, T-37, twin engine noisemaker. This is a fighter type advanced military trainer. That was the T-38. Top speed 1.3 Mach. Had a roll rate of 790 degrees per second. It's 2 rolls in a second. You really had to be strapped in when you ran that stuff over. My father, who was a military officer, career, while I was in the Air Force, said that I had an opportunity that he did not. In the late 50s and the early 60s, he tried to get on the airlines. They would not hire him because of the color of his skin. Said they couldn't get anybody to fly with a Negro pilot. Anyway, come 1971, things had changed a little bit. I got on with Eastern Airlines. I forgot to tell you about the KC-135. That's what I did my whole military career. So basically a Boeing 707, been modified to carry 200,000 pounds of jet fuel that we could either burn or pass, all of it. And this is an F-16. We did the air-to-air refueling. Any airplane that had the receptacle, fighters, bombers, transport. I refueled the SR-71, the Blackbird, with this KC-135. I passed gas all over the world. When I went to United Airlines, I flew the Electra, the 727, the workhorse. I spent 14 years on that. DC-9, Lockheed L-1011. In 1989, Eastern Airlines went out of business. At age 45, I was lucky enough to get on with United Airlines. When I got hired with Eastern, they wouldn't talk to anybody who was 30 because they didn't want to invest all that training into somebody that wasn't going to stay there another 30 years. At age 45, I got on with United. I flew the DC-8, 757, 767, 747, 2 different models of the 747. What an engineering masterpiece that thing was. God, what a beautiful airplane. It is now retired mostly. I am now retired mostly. I flew the Airbus A320 as captain. The Airbus A320 is the same type airplane that Captain Sully Sullenberg put in the Hudson River. The movie, Sully, starring Tom Hanks, great movie. You haven't seen it, you should. I know this looks like it was put together by a 3-year-old. As a matter of fact, it was. That is my 3-year-old grandson who interviewed me for his kindergarten class. His mom put this out, made the board, and he's my co-pilot. So that's why I will never update this. How did I get into flying? When I was 19 years old at Tennessee State. When I graduated high school at 17, I did not know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a dentist because my dentist had a brand new Corvette. And I thought, I'm going to be a dentist so I can get a brand new Corvette. At age 19, my dad woke me up one early morning, Saturday morning, and said, you want to go for an airplane ride? I was supposed to take up 2 senior cadets that had pilot training slots. I was going to take them up on a motivational flight. One of the guys called in sick. He says, you're legal because you're in ROTC. On the way out to Seward Air Force Base from Nashville, my dad gave me a quick briefing. Didn't retain much of anything. When we got there, the senior cadet was there. Off they went and came back about an hour and a half later. He got on the bus and went back to Tennessee State. Next ride was mine. I got in the back of a T-33, strapped in. Got the briefing from the crew chief who strapped me in. Off we went into Wild Blue Yonder. Wasn't very long after we got up, after a few acrobatic moves, my dad realized I'm sick, real sick. He couldn't see me because I'm sitting behind him, but he could hear me, put my face in there. And he said I can fly this thing straight and level for a while. I said no. I think that this is probably the thrill of a lifetime. The 2 most important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why. That was on a Saturday. Monday morning, I changed my major from pre-med biology, thinking I was going to be a dentist, to psychology, only because I would lose less credits. When I graduated, 1965, my father commissioned me as a second lieutenant. Off I went to Williams Air Force Base to go through military pilot training. And when I graduated, he pinned his wings on me. They run a trophy case in my house in Portsmouth. My total career, not just my dad, but all of the Tuskegee Airmen. I stand on the wings of the Tuskegee Airmen. The mission statement for the 55 chapters is to perpetuate the legacy, the history of the brave men and women who fought for a double victory, fighting fascism and an enemy overseas and racism and bigotry here in the United States. The second half, that history is American history. It's important. We have to remember it. The second part of the mission statement is to inspire youth to be all that they can be. We use the STEAM program as opposed to the STEM program. STEAM, science, technology, engineering, aviation, and mathematics. We have a bent toward aviation. Right now there's a shortage both in the military and in the civilian sector. Real shortage of pilots. So, you know somebody, how to steer them toward aviation. A lot of people in high school, college, don't think about aviation as a career. Not everybody can be a basketball player or a rapper or CEO of General Motors. You know, aviation, I flew airplanes for 42 years. Never worked a day in my life. If you can get paid for something you absolutely love, that's the way to do it. Tuskegee Airmen started in 1941. But there have been pressure for years to try to get a military flight training program for blacks. Before 1948, military was strictly segregated. In fact, before World War II, there were only 4 black military officers. 2 of them were chaplains. The reason is they could not have black officers giving orders to white troops. That was just totally forbidden, unthought of. So everything was completely segregated. There was a lot of pressure on Congress, on the president over the years, all through the 30s, to start a program. Because black Americans had served this country since the beginning. There's never been a conflict or a war where blacks were not involved. But there were no black pilots. There's no way, no avenue to get them into the cockpit. So there was a lot of pressure. So in 1936, the War Department did a study on how to best use the Negro in the military. This comprehensive study, I'm going to read you part of this. It is amazing. Okay. War College studies said that primarily blacks are Negroes, unscientific. They are childlike, careless, shiftless, irresponsible, secretive, superstitious, unmoral, untruthful, likely to become panicked as soon as they spot danger. As soon as they spot danger, they would run. They also said that their brains were 1/3 less capacity than that of white. The Negro brain weighed 35 ounces, white Caucasian brains weighed 45 ounces. Run at the first sign of danger. Must not have known about Crispus Attucks, the first person to die in a Revolutionary War. Must not have seen the movie Glory about the Massachusetts 45th Infantry during the Civil War. Must not have known about the Buffalo Soldiers at all. They were with Teddy Roosevelt in 1918 when he stormed San Juan Hill. Black soldiers had already won Congressional Medals of Honor by the time this 1936. Oops. There were several.
Yes.
He must not have known about the history of the blacks before 1936. Like this. I need a third. No. Good. This is Eugene Bullard. Eugene Bullard left the United States from Georgia because the Ku Klux Klan was after his father. They couldn't get his father. He lived in Georgia. Word out that they were going to get him because he was the oldest son. He ran away from home in Georgia, made his way to Newport News, stowed away on a German coal ship because he had heard about this place called France and had heard that there was no racism. So he wanted to go to France. He had to get out of Georgia because the Klan was after him. When he got to France, he became a prize fighter, a boxer, and then opened up a restaurant. Then World War I broke out. He joined the French military and became a fighter pilot. You would have thought that the War Department in 1936 would have known about Eugene Bullard. In 1925, Bessie Coleman had to go to France to get an international pilot license because nobody would train her here in the United States because she was a black woman. At that time, though, she came back, she bought an airplane and was touring the United States barnstorming, doing acrobatics and putting on air shows. You would have thought that the War Department in 1936 would have known about that. They didn't want to hear it. They just didn't want blacks to fly. And so, President Roosevelt, pressured by the NAACP, the black press, and his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, who was a champion for the program, they decided they were going to start an experiment. They were going to put this base down in Alabama, strictly Jim Crow laws, segregated. When my dad was there, he said he never went off base because he heard terrible stories about people who did venture off base and how they were threatened by the local authorities that they'd better get back on the base and never to come off. They thought it was going to be a failure. It was not. It was such a success. They only had a 40% failure rate, washout rate. Now, the white training bases had a 63% washout rate. When the word got around, they thought something's amiss, something's wrong, and insisted that the Tuskegee classes wash out 60% of their trainees. When my dad started the class, there were 20 people in his class. This is my dad. These are the only 4 that graduated. My dad said that if the belt buckle was out of line, they would wash out. He said everything had to be perfect. The thing with that, only the cream of the crop graduated. In fact, Noel Parrish, who was the commander of the Tuskegee training facility at Moulton Field, was from Kentucky. He was a white man. But he was very dedicated to the success of the program. Any of the training personnel who were not on board with his philosophy were shipped out, usually to war. So you didn't want to make Noel Parrish angry. All of the civilian pilots, the primary pilots, were black instructors. Been flying, taking the same tests that everybody else in the United States took. All of the military advanced instructors were white officers. They ate in the same mess hall, but totally completed separate. Whites and the blacks in Alabama, even on the base, could not integrate. The program was a tremendous success. They trained 996 pilots. 355 of them were shipped overseas to the European theater. P-39s, P-40s, and P-51s. P-51s. Half of them went into twin-engine, B-25s, but they sent them to different bases to learn how to fly the B-25. They were supposed to be shipped to the Japanese, to the Pacific theater. The commander of that training group for the B-25s did not want them to succeed. First of all, they put them at a base where the B-25 didn't have the capability to take off and land. So they put him somewhere where learn how to fly the B-25 where they couldn't get the B-25s in there. And they moved it around several times. By the time the program was complete, the war had ended. 355 of the pilots, including my dad, were shipped overseas to Ramitelli Air Base in Italy. Everything was totally and completely segregated. On the base, there were no whites. It was all black. They trained 996 pilots, but they trained support personnel 16,000. And my dad said, oh, that's pretty useless if the airplane won't get off the ground. You need the support, lots of support. They flew 15,553 sorties on 1,578 missions. When they first got over there, the white commanders said they didn't want any of the 99th or the 332nd, the black group, anywhere near them in the air, thinking they were going to be careless, reckless, maybe even shoot down friendly aircraft. General Davis, B.O. Davis, who was the commander, had to come back to the United States, go before Congress and fight for the right to fight, to do the things that they were trained to do. So they decided to put him on bomber escort. At that time, the bombers would take off in a large gaggle, sometimes 50 airplanes going to a station, going to a target. They were escorted by fighters. What the Germans would do would send in a wave of fighters. The escort fighters, the Americans, would go off and chase them. Another wave of Germans come in and shoot down the bombers. So they were having a big problem with that. So they decided to put the Black Squadron on them, the 99. General Davis said, well, he was a colonel at that time, said, if you leave the bomber, go off chasing glory, don't come back and land here, because I will put you in the brig. I will put you in jail. So nobody did. The bombers that they were escorting had 10 people on them. That German airplane's got one in it. Come on, do the math. Don't leave the bombers. My dad said he was somewhat intimidated and frightened by General Davis and would do whatever he said. So they flew 179 bomber missions, escort missions. Throughout the entire war, they lost 27 airplanes, 27 bombers to enemy fighters on 7 different missions. The White Fighter Group had an average loss of 46. At first, the white commanders didn't want black pilots anywhere near them. When they started hearing about the success rate and the protection that the 99th was providing, they were requesting them. In fact, the journal is P-51. The name is by request. The Tuskegee Airmen shot down 112 enemy airplanes. My dad got 2. This is a painting of my dad's airplane. This is my dad's P-40, my mom's name on the front, Connie Jean. And this was the day he shot down 2 FW-190 German military airplanes. On one occasion, they lost 13 airplanes because they were initially supposed to take the bombers halfway to the target. 2 other military fighter groups, white groups, were supposed to join them, but could not get off the ground because of weather. So, short on fuel, Tuskegee Airmen stayed with the bombers all the way to the target site, knowing that they might not be able to get back to Ramitelli. But they lost 13 airplanes on that because they were outgunned terribly. While you're here, this is January 27th, 1944. On a mission, coming back from an escort mission, they came upon a flight of FW-190s, the German military fighter. They shot down 13 airplanes. This is the day my dad got 2 of them. That's my dad there. That's his wingman, who said that he put some bullets in. So my dad was credited with 1.5 aerial victories. He said it wasn't a dogfight. He said he just came up on behind him and just shot him down. One went on the beach, one went in the water off the coast of Italy. It's never made it in the newspapers, except the black press. That's where this photo comes from. None of the major news groups carried any of this. There was no coverage at all about the accomplishments that the Tuskegee Airmen did. That's why I'm standing here to tell you. They shot down 112 enemy aircraft, destroyed another 150 on the ground, damaged another 148. They destroyed 950 rolling stock, which included 600 rail cars. Destroyed all types of different targets, munitions, bomb manufacturers, gun emplacements. Destroyed 40 ships and barges. 2 P-47s coming back from an escort mission came upon a German destroyer off the coast of Italy. And with machine gun fire alone, it didn't really sink, but they blew it up, just with machine gun fire. They won a few medals. They won a Silver Star, Red Star in Yugoslavia, Legion of Merit Award, 2 soldier medals, 3 Distinguished Unit citations, 9 Purple Hearts, 26 Bronze Stars, 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 1,104 air medals. There's only 355 people who went over there, won all these awards. The 84 of the Tuskegee Airmen were killed during the war. 12 at Tuskegee during training. 66 were shot down and killed. 32 were shot down and captured. They were held at a specific Stalag 78, that was super secure because they had special talents. They could jump in an airplane and take off. So they had to put them in a real secure facility. It was run by the Luftwaffe. And they said they were treated very well. But I talked to one of the guys, and I knew a lot of these Tuskegee Airmen. I talked to one of the guys that said they would have starved to death if it wasn't for the Red Cross. He used to feed them something called wheat soup. And he said it was just salt water. But in when the Red Cross came in, well, the Germans got most of the good food. He said, but he would have starved to death if it wasn't for the Red Cross. One of the captives was being questioned by a German interrogation officer. I said, why is it you people fight so hard for a company that treats you so poorly? He refused to answer because he said no matter what he said, he knew it was going to be used against me. When I heard the story, I asked my dad, why did you? The Nazis killed 6 million Jews, but 11 million people, all minorities, including handicapped people. How do you think blacks would have fared if the Nazis had won the war? He said, Tuskegee Airmen went to war not fighting for the country they had, but for the country they hoped to have, thinking that because of the success and the stellar performance that was being recorded, things would change. Well, they did. My dad flew 136 combat missions. Came back, was shipped back, went from Ramontelli, Italy to England to New York City on a ship. On the ship, there were 6 fighter pilots. My dad was the only black person on that ship. There was one guy in there who was from Georgia, and he was a racist, and he made no bones about it, had said all kinds of things about my dad. My dad was in Petersburg, and he was used to it, it just rolled off his back. But the other guys stood up and said, no, you're not going to treat him this way. He is a war hero. He's a fighter pilot, just like we are. That one guy segregated himself the entire trip. Wouldn't have anything to do with the other fighter pilots who befriended my father and hung out with him the whole trip back, 7 days on the ship coming back. When my dad got to New York, he was a captain, duffel bag, in uniform, in line, getting off the ship. Sign, colored, this way. He couldn't get off with the rest of them. And they explained, oh, I'm sorry, sir, but the press is down there. They're taking pictures. There's a band. You have to go away. But then he had to walk through the same crowd to get to the bus. It took him to Grand Central Station. That took him to Philadelphia and a bunch of other stops before he got to Washington, D.C. When he got to Washington, D.C., he had to get off the train. Because they pulled a colored car up to the back, behind the caboose. Wooden benches, no facilities. Because they had to be segregated before they could come into Virginia. As a kid, I rode on that train. My dad was an ROTC instructor at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and we would always take the train and down to Petersburg to visit his parents. I had 2 little brothers at the time that I picked up in Washington. And my mom would carry a jar in her purse. And she referred to it, I don't know why, she named it after a nut. She called it a pecan. So I don't know why correlation. But we always thought that things were going to change. They haven't. Gotten a lot better. They have not. When I was in the 6th grade, I was the only black kid in my class at McClellan Air Force Base. It was on the base. I had to write a paper on what we wanted to be when we grew up, and I said I wanted to be a pilot. My teacher came to me, got down and says, this is very well written, your handwriting is really nice, but it's highly unrealistic. I can't give you a good grade because there are no colored pilots. Coloreds can't fly. I said, my dad's a pilot. And she laughed on her. She says, you're mistaken. Just because he's in the Air Force doesn't make him a pilot. I said, he is a pilot. She says, no, he's not. I did not tell my parents about the incident. My mom would have lit her up. And she would have lit me up. So I brought my dad in his flight suit on career day with his helmet. And he talked about what he did. He was the commander of the squadron at that time. He was Lieutenant Colonel. I watched my teacher the whole time. I don't think she believed a word of it. And she was not a nasty person. She was uninformed. That was the culture at that time. She just did not know. I'm running over. Things have gotten a lot better. This country is divided now worse than I have ever seen. I wanted to show you a picture. I'm going to talk real loud. It's a picture of my dad when he was 22 years old. It's a picture of me when I was 21. See the resemblance? Yeah. Okay. This drawing is a picture of my dad when he was 23 and 83.
Oh, wow.
This is a picture of me when I'm 80. had to get that in. Racism and bigotry is not an American problem. I have not been to Africa. I have not been to Antarctica. I've been everywhere else. It exists everywhere, and it's in all forms. In 1870, Wyoming was coming into statehood. 1870. There was a lot of pushback from Congress because in 1870, in Wyoming, women had the right to vote. Oh, there was going to be a bad precedent. It wasn't until 50 years later, 1920, women got the right to vote in this country. In 2018, women in Egypt got the right to drive cars. 2018. Racism, bigotry, prejudice is not an American problem, it's a human problem. Prejudice, prejudge. We are wired as humans. It's a psychological defense mechanism, I think. It's another thing. I flew airplanes for 42 years. I got a degree in psychology. My father was a fighter pilot, an instructor, bomber pilot, transport pilot, administrator, went to work for Kodak after the military. He had a degree in PE, physical education. You go to school to learn how to learn. What I say here, I don't see any kids here today. I see some people that are close, they're maybe in their teens. But you've got to impart what I'm saying to the kids. You don't think this is the greatest country in the world. Look at the U.S.-Mexican border. You know there are Chinese people coming through the Mexican border, coming from China to Morocco, into Mexico to get here, escaping the horrible conditions in China to come to this land. I heard Tuskegee Airmen say one time that America is not perfect, not by a long shot. He said, but I'm going to hold her hand while she improves all along, and she always has. I have run over. I'm going to ask them if you have any questions. I don't know what you want to know, so I'm going to stop and open it up to questions. Anyone? Sir.
Where did you come up with the name and the color red tail?
The Red Tails, all of the fighter groups, and if you didn't hear, where we come up with the name and the color, the red of the empennage on the airplanes. It's on the P-51s only. Oh, and on the P-47s too, not the P-40s that were that flew. But it was just a sign. Different squadrons, some of them had checkerboard, some of them were yellow, some were green, some were blue. We didn't call them the Red Tails until way after the war. Except some of the bomber pilots called those P-51s, the 99, Red Tail Angels. And that's where the term came from. Also, Germans called them Red Tail Devils. Questions? Sir? How many Tuskegee Airmen are still living? We don't really know. We know that there are either 6 or 7 of the pilots left. We think less than 20 of the support personnel. Alexander Jefferson, and I knew a lot of them. Alexander Jefferson died in 22 of COVID that he got from his grandson. He was 100 years old. Charles McGee, who I knew, was 104 when he died. Charles McGee has more fighter pilot missions than any other American. 409. He flew P-39s and P-51s in World War II. He flew P-51s and F-89 Scorpions in Korea. He flew RF-4s in Vietnam. RF-4s in Vietnam. My job was refueling RF4s. I may have passed gas to him. I don't really know. They're all in their hundreds now. Two of the guys who were the top gun, Tuskegee Airmen won the very first Top Gun meet at Nellis Air Force Base in 1949. They were flying P-47s. The White Squadrons had P-51s, much more advanced, but the Tuskegee Airmen won. And there was a trophy, and there was supposed to be a trophy award the next day. When the Tuskegee Airmen arrived, nobody was there. So they went around and went to the headquarters and they said, oh, well, it was canceled. They said, well, we saw the trophy. Where's the trophy? Well, one of you guys already got it. They hid the trophy. I wouldn't give them the trophy. It wasn't until 1973 when a group of Tuskegee Airmen on a mission to find this thing found it in a warehouse at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Awarded in 1949, but they didn't get it until 1973.
Did you have sons, and are they following your footsteps?
I have a son who is a long-haul truck driver. I got a daughter who's a construction worker. She is a project manager for a commercial construction company and that builds banks. And I'm very proud of them both. My daughter does not sling a hammer, she has a laptop.
I have heard that some of the Tuskegee Airmen actually had learned to fly over here at the Hopewell. Your dad went on?
No. He had heard that some of the pilots learned here at Hopewell. That was before they went to Tuskegee. A lot of the pilots that went down there already knew how to fly. My dad did not. My dad had always, from Petersburg, always wanted to fly and was always told he could not because of his race. The very first time he was in an airplane was at Tuskegee, in the cockpit at the controls. Your dreams are valid. Work on your dreams, otherwise they just stay dreams. Questions? You know, on my way back to Portsmouth, I'm going to think of all the things that I should have said. So, sir.
How many of the Tuskegee Airmen came from Virginia? How many were from Virginia?
38. 38. We were very well represented. 38.
What was the total?
996 were, yeah, over, I think 2,600 applied and got into the program, but only 996 graduated. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question. If we weren't under time constraint, you could have kept going.
Oh, I could, yeah,
You
oh, I
were
could.
very interesting, and thank you for bringing your story and keep telling your story.
As long as I
Keep telling
can,
your
I'll keep
story.
telling my story. It's incredibly important to me. I used to follow when I retired, discrimination. I had to stop flying at United Airlines when I turned 60, 20 years ago. Government mandated age discrimination. You can't fly commercially after 60. They've changed it since I left to 65. My dad got a ride with the Blue Angels in the back seat of an F-18 when he was 78 years old. We think he's the oldest person to go up in an F-18. I took him out to El Centro, California, to the Naval Air Station there. And when we got back, Blue Angel, the pilot, Scott N, came to me and said, "Your dad's amazing." He said he probably flew the airplane himself for probably 45 minutes. He said he did acrobatics. He said he did a loop. And a loop is you go down, come up over the top, and come out the other side. He says as they topped and came over, he could hear my dad laughing. Questions? Sir. Well, somebody's gonna have to echo that to me, I didn't hear.
F-16, not the F-16.
Oh, no, I wish. I tried desperately, but my dad got a ride in the F-15 and F-18. Yeah, flew out of Langley in the F-15. I was supposed to take my dad in the cockpit with me on one of my flights, and then 9/11 happened. Everything shut down since then. I would love to get a ride, and I'll have to carry a bag, but I would love to get a ride. F-16 can accelerate vertically. Accelerate vertically. T-38 that I flew, I did a solo cross country while I was still a student. I went from Williams Air Force Base south of Phoenix to the Naval Air Station in Tucson. And when I landed, two guys in A4s wanted to see my airplane. So they came over and they looked. I went over and looked at the airplane. After I got my fuel, it was time for me to go. They're just standing there watching me take off. I could see them watching. Took off, just pulled up, pulled the gear up, kept the nose down. When I got to the end of the runway, I was doing 400. And I pulled the nose up. I wish I could have seen their faces. And I went all the way to 22,000 feet. In fact, when I checked in with ATC, they kept saying, okay, call 6,000, 6,000. Call 10,000, 10,000. Call 15,000. What are you flying? When I got to 22,000 though, I was out of airspeed and ideas and everything, and I managed to get it over and get the airspeed back up so I didn't fall out of the sky. I tell you, flying airplanes. I mean, I found what I absolutely love. I can't imagine. I am so incredibly blessed. So incredibly blessed. Luckiest guy ever. Everybody has obstacles. Think about it. Everybody has obstacles. Mountains to climb. You're going to view obstacles as stepping stones or a brick wall. It's your choice. Not only was I usually the only black kid in my class in grade school and in even high school. I moved to Nashville when I was in the 11th grade. That's when I went back into segregation. But I was usually on military bases. I was marginalized. The teachers expected nothing from me. One of them told me, it's not your fault, you're colored. She told me to look to the trades. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought she wanted me to open a trading post, like in the cowboy. Open to the trades, what's that? But I had another obstacle. I could not talk. I stuttered and stammered so horribly. I did not talk because all the kids made fun of me. I could not say who, what, where, when. My name is Howard. I could not say my name. A lot of the kids used to call me Howard. And I was also told when I went through speech therapy all through grade school, high school, and college. Thank you, Mr. Traub. Everybody has obstacles. Everybody has mountains to climb. Climb your mountain. And I want you to pass this on to the next generation and the generation after that. Climb your mountain. And when you get to the mountaintop, turn around and help the next one in line, because that's what we do. We are Americans. More importantly, we're champions. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are you still flying?
Oh, am I still flying? I wish. You have to have a medical in order to fly. If you've had 2 heart attacks, they won't give you a license to fly. So what I do, in fact, my grandson is now 14 years old. 6'3". And in Flintstone vitamins. I swear. He wants to be a pilot. So every summer, I take him on what's called discovery flights. And it's getting more and more expensive, but that's why we make the big bucks. And what else? I've never seen a hearse with a trailer behind it. You can't take it with you. I'm gonna spend the money I have now. You can't take it with you. So I'm gonna take my grandson on the discovery flight. Sir?
Yeah, as your dad passed on, did he fly up until when did he quit flying?
He did pass on. He was born in 1920 in Petersburg and died at Willis Hospital in Richmond in 2008. But he did get a lot of flights and flying after his career. However, he never held a pilot's license after the military, after he left the military. He flew for those 26 years that he was in the military, the entire time. And that's another thing my dad told me when I was in the Air Force. He said if I wanted to make it in the Air Force, continue going up the rank, I was going to have to get out of the cockpit and get behind the desk. He said if I wanted to stay in the airplane, I was going to have to get out of the Air Force. Great advice. Great advice. Yes, ma'am.
When you look at the Vietnam War and how we had so many African American soldiers and officers and all during the Vietnam War, and then you compare that with World War II, do you think the Vietnam War helped with race relations in America?
Do I think that the Vietnam War helped in race relations? Most definitely. Most definitely. When you're under fire in a foxhole or in any situation, you don't care what color the guy is next to him because you need him. It helped tremendously. My dad, when he was at Ramitelli, he said every time he went off base into the local towns, that people would usually send kids up to him to ask to see their tails. If you don't know people, it's easy to believe even nonsensical things about. The white military personnel told the locals, they would say they'd never seen blacks before, that the blacks were a subhuman species, somewhere between ape and human, and they had tails. And then my dad said one of the guys wanted to ask him, is it true that your tails only come out at night? The Fort Bragg Adams, Chastity Adams, who now has her name on Fort Please base, was the commander of the 6th 888, which was an all-female, all-black, segregated women's Army Corps in World War II, sent to Birmingham, England, to sort the mail, because the mail had got really bogged up, went from the United States to Birmingham, England, then was dispersed to Europe to the different places. Mail's very, very important. So it got bogged down. So they brought 252 black females, military personnel, to Birmingham, England. While they were there, the local women's group invited them to tea at 9 o'clock at night. So when they get there, Colonel Adams says, we have tea on the base at 2 o'clock. Why 9 o'clock? Wanted to see your tails.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. Sometimes you just have to laugh. Look, I'm looking for the, okay. A funny thing happened to me. I used to live in Miami. If before I got married. And big Dolphins fan. Eastern Airlines was the charter for the Miami Dolphins. And I knew a lot of those guys because I was senior enough to fly the airplane that took them to different bases. And we got free passes to go in and watch the game. I'm sitting down with my milk and cookies waiting for the Dolphins to come on Monday Night Football. I get a call. My neighbor, my buddy that I went to pilot training with, 2 blocks away. Howard, I need a babysitter. Next door neighbor got tickets. We're going to the game. What are you doing? I said, I'm coming to your house. So the kids were already in the bed. So I got my milk and my cookies and I go down and I get set up, you know. And off they go. And I'm sitting there watching with my Jack Daniels and Cheetos. I mean, no. And when they come back, midnight or so, they walk into the house. And they're laughing. And he says, Howard, you're not going to believe what my neighbor said. And his wife says, oh, you can't tell him that. I said, now you got to. Inquiring minds want to know. He said, and I knew I had met the neighbors. And they said, well, you got a babysitter. Who did you get? Oh, we got Howard. Howard the pilot? Yeah, we got Howard. You left Howard with your 2 daughters? One was 10, one was 8, I believe. He says, yeah, they had known him all of their lives. They call him Uncle Howard. He says, yeah, but aren't you afraid he might revert to his jungle ways? Sometimes you just have to laugh, you know. Yeah, it is a human problem. And you just gotta deal with it. Life's not fair. Deal with it. Brick wall or stepping stones. Keep on keeping on. Stepping stones. It's your choice. I'm looking for that.